What I'm really interested to see is how Mezzy's going to adapt his play style heading into Regulation F. The last time we got a chance to see him was at the Latin America International Championships, and we also saw him get a top 8 at Pittsburgh. So it's been a couple of regulations now and a couple of weeks for Mezzy to have to adapt that play style. As we head into this very first game, it's going to be a Incineroar on both sides, but curiously enough, that Porygon 2 is going to be hitting the field immediately.
Yeah, attack boost to start things off with that download. So, of course, that's not going to be an Ice Beam that's boosted over at this point, too. But the Porygon, a little bit more of a bulky option. And, of course, having that option be setting up Trick Room at this point. Of course, you do have to be worried about a potential fake out on the other end. And a Fluttermane that can definitely try and deal out some damage.
That's where the speed of these Incineroars is going to be really important, because if it's going to be a fake out coming in from Justin's Incineroar, Ofomezie could actually take advantage of that if he thinks that his Incineroar is going to be faster and just go ahead and hit it with a fake out as well. But Porygon 2 is going to be terastallizing immediately into that Poison Terra type, and it's so nice to not only have just the really nice defensive Terra typing, but you do also get a chance to boost up that Terra Blast. You can see the fake out comes through though, so no more fake out on the board.
This Terra Poison from the Porygon 2 is so nice because you're making sure that you cannot take these super effective fairy hits from this Fluttermane on the opposing end, but also now you can threaten a Terra Blast over onto the other end, something that this Fluttermane's not going to be appreciating whatsoever. And now that you are going to be the slowest thing there, definitely one of those situations where this Fluttermane might not be too long for the world.
Yeah, the one thing about Terra Blast that's really interesting too, even though we're going to see the Porygon 2 leave the field, we'll have to see if it comes into play later, but Terra Blast can actually change its attack, or it could be special attack focused.
Will-O-Wisp, that's going to be going into the Amoonguss swap in here. Make sure that the Porygon 2 doesn't get too out of control there and that damage over the turn, but the Amoonguss having to deal with that instead. Knock off over on the other end into the safety goggles. So now this Incineroar not going to be safe from the powder moves that the Amoonguss on the other end has. And these Dazzling Gleams, just good for a little bit of chip over and over, and it will be putting the Incineroar in rage of its Clefairy.
It's really tough here too. Now that you see the Amoonguss on the field in Trick Room, is safety goggles gone, you already called out, now you could spore that Incineroar, but if you feel like you're under threat, Justin could swap anything off of the field and it would just have to take the spore. There are not too many things on his team that actually do resist that outside of the Ogerpon.
Yeah, and
the Amoonguss.
Yeah, but with no swap in, that will be a spore right into the Incineroar over onto Justin's end. So Incineroar not going to be able to act this turn, as it is going to be that first mandatory turn of sleep. At this point now, we can just go for a parting shot onto the Fluttermane over onto Justin's end. It already wasn't dealing the most amount of damage with those Dazzling Gleams. And now the position for Mezzy to swap out and start taking advantage of the neutralized Pokemon on Justin's end.
That's the trick in this matchup, is Mezzy wants to be able to utilize these Trick Room turns, but the longer that you sit here in the Trick Room and the longer that Justin's able to stall that out, you're losing a ton of momentum on Mezzy's side to actually get some of that damage down while you have guaranteed slower Pokemon on the field.
Well, the Golden Go, definitely one of those Pokemon that you can start trying to offset a little bit of this pressure with, considering that we talked about the powerful Make It Rains, the fact that you can actually have the opportunity to try and be setting up at this point because nothing's really threatening it at this point, especially with the Amoonguss next to it. So this is one of those Pokemon that Ofomezie, it's been a couple of turns, but now maybe in a position to actually make something happen.
Just going to be a switch out, though, of the Amoonguss. You get that Regenerator healing, which will help to be able to keep that Amoonguss in the game for just a little longer. And the Intimidate coming back down, just in case that Incineroar wakes up, you are going to be mitigating how much damage it's able to do with that Flare Blitz into the Golden Go. Ogerpon now also going to be making a switch here. Fluttermane wants to keep itself safer outside of Trick Room.
Yeah, and that will be the first turn wake up here from the Incineroar and Flare Blitz into the Golden Go. Less damage thanks to that Intimidate, so the Golden Go will be able to be sticking around. Nasty Plot, +2 to its special attack, making sure that once it goes on the offensive, these are going to be attacks that stick. And of course now, with that Incineroar swapping over on Mezzy's end, you do have some Faker pressure going in on this turn.
The sad part, though, is what is Justin going to do to switch in here? Ogerpon's still going to take a considerable amount of damage. We do still have the opportunity to Terastallize, so you could technically go for the Terastallization, get the special defense boost with the Embody aspect, but you still have to consider how much damage you're going to be taking from this Golden Go, and how are you going to actually get rid of it?
That's the biggest thing here, especially too if the Incineroar over on Justin's end can be dealt with and you fake out on this turn. All of a sudden you can try and fire off a powerful Shadow Ball into the slot. So Incineroar going to be swapping out on this turn. A little bit of a dance over on Justin's end, and Flutter Mane coming back out. This Flutter Mane, it's definitely a tough spot, but wanting to make sure that the Incineroar is kept safe this time around. Spiky Shield, so the Ogerpon is going to be going on the maximum defensive, and the Fake Out, nothing this time around. This does allow the Golden Go, though, to fire off its first attack, the Make It Rain into the Flutter Mane. Super effective hit. It's completely gone.
Yeah, what you're hoping for there if you're Justin is that it was a single target attack into the Ogerpon. The Shadow Ball is pretty easily able to knock out the Ogerpon there, but now you've lost your Flutter Mane, one of your fastest pieces outside of Trick Room. Good thing though, Justin does have the Roaring Moon in the back, and we get a chance to see what this booster energy is going to activate.
For the Roaring Moon, it is going to be at this point the attack. So whatever you want to be firing off an attack with will be super duper strong. At this point too, though, being able to bring this in on the last turn of Trick Room is going to be nice because you do have a decent amount of speed on your side. And of course, with that attack boost, you can be threatening a lot of powerful hits onto the opposing end, including this Golden Go already taking so much damage from that Flare Blitz earlier on. Definitely susceptible to taking an attack there. So even if you lost your Flutter Mane for that swap in, I don't necessarily think this is the worst position.
Yeah, I mean, Roaring Moon is pressuring with that super effective knockoff. Now that Terrestrialization is off the board from the Porygon 2, there's no real way for you to be able to save this Golden Go from that Dark type pressure. It's going to be a Moongus, though, that takes the Incineroar's place. And you can see how that Regenerator healing has really helped out here for that Amoongus' bulk.
But even though Mezzy had used his Terrestrialization, Justin has not. And the Roaring Moon, it's going to be that Fairy type. One of those Terrestrialization types that hasn't necessarily changed too much through this Roaring Moon's lifespan, of course, being able to fire off a very powerful Acrobatics. Ivy Cudgel into the Golden Go. Considering how low it was Golden Go, that is going to be an easy KO there. And if this is the Acrobatics into this Amoongus, freshly swapped in, yes, you did get more health at this point, but that's not going to matter.
Justin has done a fantastic job of stalling through these Trick Room turns, and now that they are over and the Roaring Moon is able to come in at the perfect time, there's nothing much that Ofomezie can do in this situation to stop the steamroll effect of this Roaring Moon. You've got the Incineroar now that's going to help mitigate that booster energy boost just a little bit, but Porygon 2, can it do the job all by itself?
That's the thing here. Porygon 2 has definitely gone through some nutty endgames when we're looking at just the passive Pokemon here. It definitely can be dealing a lot, but at this point, this Roaring Moon, this Ogerpon, there's so much damage output on the other end that even if you do try and go for the Trick Room, I think it's going to be a pretty difficult situation, and I don't think you're just really threatening enough damage back. The Ice Beam is definitely cute, but you have to get into that spot in the first place.
Yeah, and it's going to be an attack boost there on the download as well. So Porygon doesn't even get a chance to increase that special attack output, and that attack is now going to be mitigated again when you see the Incineroar swap in on Justin's side. It's been just expert positioning on Justin's end.
That's why you didn't necessarily mind about losing the Flutter Mane earlier, because the more important piece in this puzzle is going to be that Incineroar. And of course, taking that Fake Out on the swap in is just going to be a negated hit. Evolite knockoff onto the Porygon 2, so it is going to get this opportunity to be going instead of Trick Room again. But at this point, you need to be looking at that damage coming out from Mezzy's end and where you're necessarily going to be able to see that. The Incineroar brought in by Justin, you do have your own Fake Out pressure on this first turn, and that can be a Porygon 2 that can be completely eliminated from that point.
And you have to, because Porygon 2 is threatening Recover. So if Porygon 2 is left alone, then it could just get out of hand. I don't think the game is going so long that we would get into a timer situation, but you never want to actually leave that option on the table for your opponent.
Yeah, Porygon 2, that's definitely something that you need to give at least a decent amount of respect to at this point, and Incineroar are going to do just that, Fake Out into the slot. So Porygon 2, no opportunity for an Ice Beam. Parting Shot to try and eliminate some of the damage over on Justin's end. Of course, with Mezzy only having 2 Pokemon left, it's only just going to be for that damage mitigation. But the Roaring Moon still has a lot it could be doing, and the Acrobatics into that Porygon 2 is going to leave Mezzy down to his final Pokemon.
That Incineroar on its lonesome. It was already so tough when Mezzy went down to just the Porygon 2 and the Incineroar. You're looking at the Golden Go as your big source of damage in this matchup, and it just wasn't quite able to get into the position that Mezzy wanted it to be able to secure those knockouts. The Ogerpon going for the Spiky Shield on that turn and allowing that Flutter Mane to get knocked out really put Justin far ahead, being able to secure the knockouts once the Trick Room had ended. So we're really going to be looking at the game 2 and what adjustments Mezzy can make.
Yeah, I feel like it was called out pretty well earlier on by you that the Trick Room, that if Justin can be playing through it, all of a sudden, Mezzy, when you have this team that's designed around it, at least with the 4 Pokemon that you brought, it's going to be a little bit of a tricky situation. The for fun thing out on the way out here, of course, not long for this world, as it will be a double up into the Incineroar, be taking us into our game 2. But I feel like for Mezzy, you have to be looking at, if you want to go for that Trick Room option the next time around, how are you going to be able to enable that a little bit sooner? Because we got to see the Golden Go on the 4 swap. It already took so much damage. And then the KO that you took wasn't necessarily impactful for the game, considering Justin still had so many powerful options on his team. That will be the biggest thing he has to find the answer to going on forward.
I think Mezzy has a really tough time in this matchup because there are already so many naturally fast pieces on Justin's side. When you look at the Fluttermane and the Roaring Moon, you almost feel forced into the situation where you have to go for the Trick Room. Otherwise, you're relying on the bulk of your Pokemon to just kind of get you through this game. But Justin has the Roaring Moon, the Fluttermane that can really run away with things for how offensively trained they are.
What I really want to be looking at is specifically the Golden Go. This is a Pokemon that Mezzy definitely has liked when we're looking at past teams that he's used, but when you're looking at it paired up into Justin's team, obviously when you're looking at the Make It Rains, which is one of those, it's the spread damage move, that's where you're taking your double KOs, that's where you're dealing that bulk damage. But when all of a sudden, this Incineroar doesn't mind it, the Ogerpon doesn't mind it, the Ogerpon can even Terrasilize, be taking even less if you're trying to fire off a Shadow Ball. It just kind of seemed like there was too many answers over on Justin's end for that to be one of those key Pokemon where you're looking for that damage from.
It's tough too because Golden Go was at such low HP by the time that Trick Room had ended that there wasn't enough for Mezzy to actually go for what I would consider in this matchup necessary, like 2 Nasty Plots. That sounds so aggressive, but otherwise, how are you going to be getting through all those resists that you just called out? Otherwise, you can kind of look at some of the other options. I do wonder if there's a place for this Como to make an appearance, but it's going to have some trouble getting through the Roaring Moon and the Fluttermane if not positioned correctly.
I do want to give credit to Mezzy in that first game though, because of course being able to set up your positioning that you could Spore then the Incineroar on the other end, one of those things that is threatening into your Golden Go, that positioning was good, and it did happen to be a first turn wake up on Justin's end, which really was then the bulk of the damage and put the Golden Go in a really difficult situation. So knowing that too, there definitely was good positioning then coming out. So you can try and go for it again with a couple of different option changes, or hey, if I don't get unlucky with this first turn wake up, all of a sudden I can be doing a lot more. So there is that. But heading into game 2, we'll have to see where changes are. But the Porygon 2, no change there.
No, it's actually not going to be a change on either side here as we see a run back of the leads in game number 1. But what about this turn 1 could be different? I feel like Mezzy can absolutely just go for the Trick Room here. He knows that his Incineroar is faster, so the Fake Out would absolutely work into the Incineroar on the opposing side. I wonder if you Terra though, because I felt like that Terra actually left Mezzy with way less options when it came down to trying to preserve that for the Golden Go later.
Yeah, you definitely want to make sure if there's no Terrasalization that you're not going to be susceptible to a powerful Moonblast from the other end. But it will be a Moonblast with no Terra that is launched into the Incineroar again. So smartly saving the Terra from the Porygon 2 this side around, and Incineroar just right below half will get some recovery back. So that is now a Terra that can be used for later, and the Porygon 2 an opportunity for the Trick Room again.
And it's nice too because with a Fake Out, if Justin wanted to go for something like the Parting Shot, you're now denying that for another turn. You could end up going for just the manual switch out here, but one thing we haven't quite talked about yet is that Incineroar is packing Will-O-Wisp. And so what a unique supportive option to have on this Incineroar that can help just start to slow the game down on Mezzy's side.
It's definitely super nice to see that Will-O-Wisp come on by. Last time, going into the Amoonguss on the swap in from Mezzy, not necessarily quite as impactful, but keeping the Porygon 2 honest at this point, I definitely think is useful. Ice Beam into the Fluttermane, so little damage at this point, and no freeze, and now the Will-O-Wisp connecting. That will be the burn.
But now Porygon 2 is actually doing some damage. If you hit the Ice Beam, good chance that you might even just get a freeze. So, hey, sometimes you got to try to go for that. And you could see that Mezzy just having to go for some of these other options can tell that he is still struggling to try to figure out a good way to be able to try to get in this damage. Incineroar is going to go down for all of its troubles, too, with the double up, with the Moonblasts.
See, if it wasn't for the Intimidate drop, that double up could have been something to take down that Flutter Mane over at this point. But now the Incineroar from Mezzy is gone. You do get the free swap into the Amoonguss this time, though, so you can be threatening a little bit onto this Flutter Mane, but notably no knockoff onto the Incineroar. That is going to be a Spore Resist over on the other end, and the Flare Blitz is definitely something that can be dealing some damage, even if it is at a -1 from the initial Intimidate to be starting things out. And from Mezzy's end, you're in this Trick Room, but you still just really don't look like you're threatening too much damage.
No, the Porygon 2 just isn't quite what you would be looking at in terms of being able to just kind of chunk away at these Pokemon. We saw just how little damage that Ice Beam was doing, and you can't always rely upon that unless you want to Terrastalize this Porygon and go for those Poison Terra Blasts. We're going to see the Flutter Mane leave the field, though, and so one of the other Pokemon we have to kind of consider when it comes to the score is going to be that Ogerpon that takes its place.
Yep, and that is going to be doing a whole lot of nothing from that spot. Porygon 2 with the Ice Beam follow-up. Still just slowly but surely chunking away at things is now a swap over on Justin's end. He has not stopped pivoting from that first match. And the parting shot into the Amoonguss. Hey, a chance to be bringing something in. It might be a little bit better poise going on forward. Roaring Moon maybe doesn't necessarily like Trick Room too much, but you have to protect, and hey, that could be good enough to get you through the turns.
Yeah, it's almost over, so it doesn't really feel too bad to be able to bring it in here. You know you're going to be getting the attack boost because the Incineroar is off the table, so Mezzy couldn't even bring it in to be able to try to deny that. Now, you're looking at the situation, though. You still have 2 turns of Trick Room. Justin has to play around this a little bit, but there's still a way for you to protect here and then go for a Follow Me or something else on the next turn.
Yeah, or even how we get to see that the Incineroar are going to be back in also works. You'll have that fake out on that last turn. So definitely super, super smart how he's navigating through this. And I'm curious then where Mezzy's going to be going on from this point. We haven't gotten to see his 4th and final Pokemon yet. This is going to be the opportunity for it now. But if it is this Golden Go, that doesn't really have the longest time to be making an impact. But here is that adjustment. Como-O hitting the field. Not necessarily the highest usage Pokemon around, but if it can start getting set up, it could be very heavily threatening Justin.
Yeah, this is what I was excited about seeing, is whether or not Como-O could make an appearance over something like the Golden Go. The Intimidate, though, it's gonna hurt a little bit if you want to just go for something like a raw Iron Head, but you still, of course, as you mentioned, have the Wombo combo of the Iron Defense and the Body Press for a little bit later that doesn't necessarily care about those Intimidate drops. Amoonguss is not going to fall for it. It's just going to be a Pollen Puff to try to get some big damage down onto the Ogerpon that left the field.
And at this point, at least you do have the fake out here over on this end. Had Justin left in the Ogerpon for the chance at a Follow Me redirection, this could have been a free turn for Mezzy to be getting that Como-O set up. So now you do have the fake out, and the Como-O, once we get out of Trick Room, is going to be behind on that setup. And that's going to be a really important part of this, because it is definitely one of those typings that's a little bit weird. If you're committing your Terrastalization to it, then you're going to be weak to that Incineroar over on the other end. So as Mezzy goes ahead and Terrastalizes into the Steel type, that's going to be something to keep an eye out for.
You could just go for the Iron Head to try to fish for a flinch. That is something that you could kind of go for here, but the fake out into the Amoonguss, so we'll have to see what this Como-O is going to be up to. Also, it's just really nice to have that defensive typing against something like the Acrobatics that could be coming through. It is just going to be that Iron Defense here, but Roaring goes for the knockoff, and now those leftovers are completely gone. Oh, the Rocky Helmet's gone. Even better, honestly.
Yeah, just neutralize the Amoonguss as much as possible, but now with the +2 defense over onto the Como-O, we are out of Trick Room, and this is where you have to start looking at this Pokemon. If Como-O isn't necessarily supported by things around it, though, then it can start to fall apart. So targeting into the Amoonguss, especially since you do have those side pollen puffs, if the Como-O gets some damage not taken down, I definitely don't mind trying to take care of both these Pokemon and not just focusing straight in on the one.
Did you see the Terrastalization we're going to get here? It's going to be a Ghost Terra onto the Incineroar, and that may just seal the deal. If Mezzy goes for a Body Press into that slot, which would naturally be super effective into the Incineroar, that would now not actually get any damage down. on the table for just thoughts for later as we do see the Amoonguss switch out.
That's definitely one of the ways that you can keep a Como in check. That is for sure. It will be the Amoonguss swapping out, Porygon 2 brought in, and as the Terastallization comes out, that's going to be what to look out for. Where did this body press go?
Yeah, it could be the body press. It could end up also just being an Iron Head here, but it's not going to be effective if that's going to be the case. The knockoff, though, this time into the Porygon 2 will knock off the Eviolite. So now Porygon 2 might just get blown over by a little bit of wind, but it was a body press in the Incineroar. What a great play from Justin here to keep that Incineroar alive and get the Will-O-Wisp down onto the Como.
Honestly, just a perfect turn coming out from Justin at this end. Of course, this Incineroar being one of those things that could really threaten into this Como as it's trying to set up. You want to get it off of the field as fast as possible, but so smart of a Terra, a defensive Terra at this point in the match. And the Iron Heads are going to be doing less and less as, of course, that is something that can be Intimidate spammed down.
Yeah, another body press too. It feels so bad because you could go for another Iron Defense here, but you're already such on the back foot when it comes to momentum. You have this Amoonguss that could switch back in, but also doesn't have the Rocky Helmet anymore, so any sort of physical attacks aren't even getting chip damage down to help soften them up for this Como to take down.
And the Como too, one of those things is you're looking for it to not be taking too much damage when you're setting up this Iron Defense, but you're also looking to deal out some good damage at this point, and the burn coming out too is definitely going to be hurting on that. Porygon 2, no Eviolite, powerful attack from this Roaring Moon is going to be taken down. Body press into the Roaring Moon slot. That one is going to be taking the KO, but Mezzy is losing pieces really fast to this team. You're not going to be able to have an opportunity to get the Trick Room set back up, and a parting shot into the Como. All of a sudden, they'll be Fake Out again next turn, and a chance for Justin Pivot once again.
Yeah, you can even just bring the Ogerpon in here and go for something like the Follow Me. You could also leave it for later. There's just so many options that Justin can play around with. And even looking at the Flutter Mane, it's going to be a great option to have here.
Well, at this point, too, Mezzy's down to not very many Pokemon where we're looking at this Como over on his end. And this Flutter Mane, yes, it has the choice specs, but it also does have that Perish Song. So you can even just put a complete end to that there. But I feel like you would just be able to outdamage it at this point anyways. So Justin just has so many options. And down to just the Como and Amoonguss on Mezzy's end, Mezzy doesn't.
Yeah, I actually love the call out for the Perish Song here because Como is still going to be a very bulky Pokemon. Now that the knockoff is no longer a part of the equation, this Como still has access to its leftovers to be able to kind of mitigate some of that burn chip that it would be taking. So you just go for the Perish Song here. You have plenty of pieces to be able to play around with, and you just knock out both of these Pokemon by the end. We're going to see an expert display here. Mezzy is shaking his head. He knows this is going to be the end of the game in just a couple of turns.
Yeah, the Como might have a pretty strong defense here, but no getting around that Perish Song. And at this point, too, no way to really be out damaging Justin to try and even up the score. All it's going to take is a couple of swaps. So sure, you kind of have one of those setups that you can try and be doing something with, but the Flutter Mane, it's always a struggle for which is going to be that fourth and final move. But the Perish Song, so smart in this case to really just put a lock on Mezzy's chances in this match.
Yeah, with choice specs, no less, right?
Yeah.
And so it feels so funny to be able to see something like a supportive option in that fourth slot, but now you can see why. A lot of trainers are also opting for Protect in that final slot, or you can even go for something like the Misty Terrain. That's another option we've seen a lot of, but the Perish Song is perfect in this situation. And just let's get that revolving door started.
Yeah, at this point, it's a pretty quick swap in the fact that, hey, this body press can't actually do anything to the Flutter Mane or the Incineroar. And for the Iron Heads, you've been intimidated once, you've been a parting shot, you're going to get intimidated again. You're not doing any damage at this point. So, hey, at this point, we're going to be swapping around, but that switch is going to lock it.
Yeah, the only way that I could even see this is if the Amoonguss gets like a crit on the palm up or something.
No.
I don't know. Spiky Shield again makes a lot of sense here, but we are going to see the Iron Head and Let's see how much this actually does.
A
Oh.
whopping 3 HP Iron Head.
No.
Absolutely insane. The Amoongus doing spades more damage with that pollen puff. And that has been an Amoongus that has had a parting shot into it as well.
I've never thought I'd see the day, honestly, that a Amoongus would do more damage than its partner. But here we are. We're going to see the Perish count fall again, and we are just a couple of turns away. Fluttermane even in this position, like after how little the Incineroar took, it might be even 3 hits, but we're not even going to see the end of it. Mezzi's going to lock in the towel, and Justin with a 2-0 victory to start off our stream in Knoxville.
I'm glad to see the game cancel as opposed to playing